It really feels like the ground is shifting under our feet with
Yeah.
how fast technology is changing, especially when it comes to working with data.
It really does.
One day we're fine-tuning some complex measure. The next we're, well, asking an AI to maybe build the report for us.
Yeah, it's less about optimizing the old ways, isn't it? And more about embracing entirely new ones. The very interaction with data is being redefined.
Exactly. And that's why today we're taking a deep dive into one of the, well, most impactful transformations happening right now, how generative AI is fundamentally changing Microsoft Power BI.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just enhancing analysis anymore, it's enabling actual creation.
And it's changing who can do what with data. That's that democratizing effect we're seeing.
Right. So we pulled together quite a stack of sources for this deep dive articles, research papers, notes from people right at the sharp end of this.
Folks both inside Microsoft and out in the Power BI community.
Yeah, and it gives a fantastic view into what's happening, why it's happening, and what the real world implications actually are.
These sources really paint a picture of a platform undergoing, well, a pretty rapid evolution driven by some specific goals.
So our mission today is to unpack all of this for you. We want to give you a shortcut sort of to understanding the biggest shifts, the most exciting new capabilities.
And really what it all means for your day-to-day when interacting with data and building reports.
Exactly. Think of it as getting well-informed, fast, and hopefully hitting a few aha moments along the way.
Okay, let's jump right in then. When we talk about AI in Power BI, some of you might already be thinking about features you've used for a while.
Right.
But generative AI or Gen AI is something distinctly different. Let's maybe clarify what that is in this context first.
Good idea, because Power BI has had smart features for a while now. We've got automated machine learning, AutoML, those really useful AI visuals like key influencers and the decomposition tree.
Anomaly detection.
Anomaly detection, yeah. Those are powerful tools.
Absolutely. But those, let's call them traditional AI features, they're primarily about analyzing existing data, right? They help you find patterns, understand correlations, maybe predict outcomes based on the past, essentially understanding what happened or what might happen given the current data.
Got it. So analyzing the known, making sense of what's already there.
Exactly. Gen AI, on the other hand, creates new content.
Wow.
It can generate code, like DAX. It can write summaries, design report layouts, or even synthesize insights in natural language.
So it moves Power BI beyond just descriptive analysis.
Right. It helps you figure out what should be done, or maybe how do I build this report element by actually, creating it for you.
Okay. So it's about building the future state or maybe the means to get there, shifting from answering what happened to helping you do things and ask what's next by generating the necessary components.
That's the fundamental change, yeah. And as the sources make really clear, the strategic goal driving all this is democratization.
Making it easier for more people.
Exactly, making sophisticated data analytics tasks accessible to a much wider audience, speeding up workflows for everyone from the casual business user right through to the seasoned developer.
And you see that democratization really clearly in the emphasis on natural language interaction, right? That seems key.
Oh, absolutely. That's where Copilot comes in with its chat with your data capability and the enhanced Q&A feature. You can just ask questions in plain English.
That lowers the barrier massively, I'd imagine.
It does. No need to know DAX or M code just to explore your data or ask a simple question. But, and this is absolutely critical, the sources emphasize this repeatedly. This relies heavily on robust data governance and preparing your data model properly.
Right. The AI needs good input.
Exactly. The AI can only interpret what it's fed accurately. Garbage in, garbage out still very much applies.
Okay, so let's talk about the star of the show powering a lot of this.
Yeah.
Microsoft Copilot. This isn't just a Power BI thing, is it? It's broader.
That's right. It's a central Gen AI assistant woven across the whole Microsoft Fabric ecosystem, and that very much includes Power BI. It leverages those large language models, the LLMs, to provide that chat and generation capability.
And it's really designed to be an augmentation tool for the user, whatever their role is.
Precisely. It's there to assist, not replace.
So for the typical business user, maybe someone who consumes reports or does some light exploration,
Right.
what does this actually look like for them? How does it change things?
Well, for them, it's mainly about faster exploration and getting answers without needing to, wait for someone else. They can chat with their data directly in a report.
Just type a question.
Just type a question, find content, perform ad hoc analysis, get quick insights. And there's even a standalone Copilot experience now where you can query across multiple reports, semantic models, or even Fabric data agents you have access to.
Oh, wow. So it's not limited to just the report you're currently looking at. That's huge.
Yeah, it really expands the scope of what you can ask. And think about getting summaries, too.
Summaries.
Copilot can give you concise summaries of entire reports or specific topics within them. You can customize these summaries with prompts, and you can even add them to your email subscriptions.
Like an automatic executive briefing.
Kind of, yeah. Generated automatically. And then there's visual creation.
Is that just asking for a chart, like show me sales by region?
Starts there, yes. You can quickly generate and analyze visuals just by asking questions. But what's really interesting is if the visual you need to answer your question doesn't actually exist in the report, Copilot can try to build a new visual directly from the underlying semantic model, assuming the data's there.
Whoa. Generating new visuals on the fly based on a natural language question.
Yeah.
That feels like a pretty big leap.
It really is. And the sources also mentioned Fabric data agents. This is where Copilot gets even more powerful.
How so?
Because it can access and reason over data from all sorts of diverse sources unified in one lake, things like lakehouses, warehouses, KQL databases. This enables seamless natural language querying across different data environments, which, is often a major technical hurdle for users.
Right. Joining data mentally or asking someone to build a view. This bypasses that.
Potentially, yes.
Okay, so that's the business user getting easier access. What about for the people building this stuff? The report authors, the data model owners. How does Copilot help them?
Well, it's designed to accelerate their entire workflow, really. For instance, Copilot can actually suggest relevant topics and structures for a new report.
Suggest structures?
Yeah, and even generate entire starting pages based on your data.
Wow, okay. That could save hours, just staring at a blank canvas wondering how to begin.
Absolutely. And then there's the big one for many developers, DAX.
Ah, yes, DAX.
Yeah.
The bane of many existences.
Well, Copilot is becoming a significant help in writing DAX queries, especially the complex ones. The sources noted recent improvements mean it's getting better at correctness, understanding context like row and filter context, and even correctly using things like inactive relationships.
That sounds incredibly helpful. But I bet you still need to check its homework.
Oh, crucially, yes. The sources are very clear on this. Users still need to review and validate the generated DAX. It's powerful assistance, a great starting point, but it's not a magic button that removes the need for understanding DAX yourself.
Good. Keeps us employed for a bit longer.
Exactly. It can also help enhance the semantic models themselves by adding descriptions to measures or summarizing the model, making it easier for both other humans and the AI to understand what's going on.
And what about those dynamic text summaries you mentioned earlier? The ones that change?
Right, that's Smart Narratives 2.0. It's an evolution of an existing visual, but now powered by GenAI. It creates those dynamic text descriptions we talked about.
So they update automatically based on user filters.
Exactly. If you filter the report, the narrative updates to provide context and insights specific to what you're currently viewing.
That's amazing. The story literally updates with the data and the user selections. No manual rewrites.
Precisely. It analyzes KPIs, explains trends, points out key influencers, all without the report author needing to be a DAX wizard to write explanations for every possible combination of filters.
Okay, that's a huge time saver. And you mentioned it helps the Q&A feature too.
Yes, GenAI is enhancing the core Q&A feature itself. Copilot automatically generates synonyms for data fields based on the model's metadata.
Okay, explain that a bit more. Why does that matter? How does it help?
Well, let's say your data column is technically named custod. Copilot might look at that and suggest synonyms like customer identifier, client number, or maybe even account ID based on the data or descriptions.
Okay.
So if a user then asks a question using client number, the Q&A feature is much more likely to understand what they mean because Copilot has already made that connection in the background. It makes asking questions in plain English much more reliable.
Got it. It's making the system smarter about how people actually talk about the data, not just the technical names.
Yeah, exactly. It improves the underlying engine's ability to map your natural language words to the actual data model constructs.
The overarching theme here really sounds like augmentation, doesn't it? Not replacement.
That's absolutely the message coming through. These GenAI tools are designed to assist human users. They aren't replacing the need for expertise, but they are definitely shifting it.
Shifting it how?
While the value for data professionals moves more towards strategic planning, critically validating the AI's outputs, and becoming really adept at prompt engineering.
Prompt engineering, knowing how to ask the AI the right questions.
Exactly, how to guide it effectively to get the most useful outputs. So you need to evolve your skills to guide and evaluate the AI, not just do the task the AI might now be able to help with.
So this isn't just a random collection of new features appearing. It's clearly part of a bigger strategic push. Who are the people and, the teams driving this transformation?
Yeah, it's definitely strategic. It's a mix of high-level vision at Microsoft, dedicated product teams actually building the tech, and crucial contributions from the community who are putting it to practical use and providing that vital feedback loop.
Can you give us some names? Who's steering the ship?
Well, at the top level, you have people like Kim Manis, who's the corporate vice president leading Power BI and Fabric product development. She's providing that overall strategic direction for integrating GenAI.
Makes sense.
And it's probably no surprise that Microsoft was recognized as a leader in GenAI BI functionality in a recent Forrester Wave report. That reflects the focus.
And the folks building the actual features, the engineers, the PMs.
Absolutely. People like Anita Ambalavanan, who's been deeply involved in shaping Copilot's core chat experiences. Her background includes time on the Fabric customer advisory team, so that customer focus is built in.
Okay.
And Zoe Douglas, working specifically on improving the accuracy and reliability of the generated DAX, which we know is super important. And a really significant accessibility point came from the work of Raj Rakhi and Joanne Wong. They were instrumental in the announcement that made Copilot available on much lower cost Fabric SKUs F2 and above.
Oh, right. Not just the top tier F64 P1 anymore.
Exactly. That was huge for broadening who can actually use these features. It moves it out of just the realm of the largest enterprises.
That really is key for democratization.
It is. And of course, behind them are the massive, broader Fabric and Power BI product groups integrating all this across the platform, ensuring data quality tools and AI work hand in hand.
Is this all driven by Microsoft's internal vision, or is customer feedback playing a significant role? You mentioned Anita's background.
Oh, it seems heavily customer-centric. The sources even share a specific anecdote. Apparently, a personal experience Satya Nadella himself had with a Copilot limitation directly led to the development of new Fabric Copilot capacities features.
Well, really, feedback right from the top based on usage.
Seems so. It shows that user experience, even at the highest level, is actively driving development. That's a pretty powerful feedback loop.
It certainly is. And what about the community outside of Microsoft? How important are they?
They are absolutely vital for practical adoption and showing how this stuff is actually used effectively in the real world. You have people like Injae Park, a Microsoft MVP.
Ah, yes. I saw his name come up a lot in the sources.
He's been doing some incredible work sharing his experiments and practical insights on using AI to optimize workflows. He talks about aiming for something like a 10x efficiency gain for developers using these tools.
A 10x game. That's ambitious. I saw he has such an interesting journey, too, starting in Korea, moving around Europe, ending up in Poland, market data analysis, VBA, then Power BI.
Yeah, and even trying Twitch streaming, apparently.
Huh. That background gives him a unique perspective, I imagine.
It seems to. He approaches problems with a very practical, hands-on, experimental mindset, which is perfect for exploring these new AI capabilities and figuring out what really works.
And other community players.
Then you have organizations like SQLBI, Marco Russo, and Alberto Ferrari. They're giants in the Power BI training and consulting space.
Of course.
They provide really detailed guidance, often quite technical, on using LLMs for things like generating code for custom visuals, but they always emphasize that it's an iterative process.
Right, not just push a button.
Not at all. It requires significant user effort, clear context, and critical thinking in validating the output. They really stress that.
So not a press button, get perfection scenario then.
Definitely not. And beyond specific names, the broader community on forums and user groups submitting ideas on the feedback channels, they all contribute countless ideas and help Microsoft refine the features based on real-world usage.
It really sounds like a collaborative ecosystem.
It is. Microsoft builds the platform foundation. Partners like SQLBI provide best practices and deep dives, and community influencers like Injae Park accelerate that knowledge transfer and show the practical application. It all works together.
Okay, let's get concrete then. What does this actually look like when you use it? The sources included some really fascinating specific examples, especially from Injae Park's experiments, putting these tools through their paces.
Absolutely. Let's take Copilot-generated DAX first. The sources give examples where users prompted Copilot with quite complex business questions.
Like what?
Like, for online orders, what is the top product with percent of total sales by year based on ship date? That's not a trivial query.
No, definitely
Right.
not. And Copilot just spits out the DAX for that.
Yes, it generates a DAX query that intelligently handles things like using the right date column, calculating percentages of total, potentially using inactive relationships if needed, or another example, asking in the web service, which days of the week have the most percentage of total orders shipped.
And it answers that.
Copilot not only generates the DAX, but can even summarize the answer for you right there in the chat pane. It definitely saves time getting started, finding the right functions, but again, you must review it for correctness and context.
Understood. What about automating report creation? You mentioned that earlier. How quick is that process?
It seems pretty quick. In Power BI Desktop, once your data is loaded, you click the Copilot icon. You can ask it broadly to suggest content based on the data it sees.
Or be more specific.
Or be more specific, like create a report that shows sales trends and key influencers. It then analyzes your data, proposes report pages with relevant visuals already populated, and gives you a really intelligent starting point almost instantly.
That definitely beats manually adding pages, dragging fields, picking visual types from scratch every time.
Massively faster, especially for initial exploration or standard reports. Now, for developers building very specific, maybe complex custom visuals,
Yeah.
especially those using Deneb, which relies on Vega or Vega-lite JSON specifications, LLMs can potentially help generate that complex code.
That sounds useful. That JSON can get pretty verbose.
It really can. SQLBI demonstrated this with a detailed example. They walked through generating the Vega-lite specs for a multi-element sales card. Visual, the kind with multiple numbers, conditional formatting, maybe spark lines.
Right. Coding something like that accurately by hand sounds tedious.
Extremely tedious and error-prone. The AI can generate that initial code structure based on a detailed natural language description of what you want the visual to look like and how it should behave.
Again, caveats apply.
Big time. SQLBI emphasized you need to provide very clear, detailed context about the visual design, the data mapping, the interactions, and it absolutely requires an iterative process of prompting, checking the output, refining the prompt, and trying again. It's not magic.
Got it. And Smart Narratives 2.0 in action, you mentioned it updates with filters. Can you paint a picture of that?
Sure. Imagine you're looking at a sales report, maybe a map and some charts. You click on the East region on the map to filter everything down. The Smart Narrative visual, powered by GenAI, won't just show you the same generic summary text it showed before. It will dynamically analyze the sales KPIs specifically within that filtered East region data.
So it recalculates and rewrites.
Exactly. It might explain the key sales trends you're seeing just for the East. It might highlight which product categories were the key influencers specifically for that region's sales performance. All in natural language text that updates instantly as you click around and filter.
That's really powerful context-aware storytelling. And the author didn't have to write countless conditional IF statements.
Precisely. It unlocks a lot of value for the end user by providing relevant commentary automatically. And remember the Q&A feature allowing natural language questions.
Yeah, the synonym generation.
Right. So Copilot helps make that better by automatically suggesting synonyms. If your data field is technically customer ID, Copilot might suggest linking it to terms like client reference or user code.
And then if someone asks,
If someone then asks a question like, show me sales by client reference, the Q&A feature understands what data field they actually mean, because Copilot has helped make that connection behind the scenes.
okay, so it's making the underlying natural language engine much more robust and less sensitive to the user knowing the exact technical field names.
Exactly. It helps bridge that gap. And this really highlights the shift, doesn't it? It's not just about the new Copilot chat interface. It's how GenAI is enhancing and improving core Power BI features that have been around for a while, too.
That's a great point. Now let's dive into Injae Park's deep dive experiments with ChatGPT. He asked that provocative question, can ChatGPT do my job as a Power BI developer?
Yes, this was fascinating stuff. He really put it through its paces, testing it on generating mockups, creating documentation, and writing code.
What did he find with data analysis?
Using ChatGPT's code interpreter feature, which is now called Advanced Data Analytics, he tried feeding it a data set. He found it could do surprisingly deep analysis. For example, with some hotel booking data. It didn't just identify that there was missing data in the agent and company columns. It actually tried to analyze why those columns might be empty, suggesting it was likely because direct guest bookings don't involve agents or companies.
Whoa, that's remarkable. It's inferring the business context from the data structure, not just reporting missing values. That's going beyond simple description.
Precisely. That level of interpretation was quite surprising. He also tested it on data modeling. He asked it to take some flat data, normalize it into a proper star schema, and output the M code for Power Query.
How did that go? Star schemas are fundamental.
Well, the sources note a clear split here. The M code generation part apparently failed. The code was unusable, strange formatting, hidden sections, just not workable.
So not quite ready to automate ETL yet.
Not directly into M code, it seems. But the theory part works surprisingly well. It could accurately outline the target star schema structure. It correctly identified which columns should go into the fact table and which should go into the various dimension tables.
So it understood the concept, the principles of normalization, but struggled with the specific Power Query M language implementation.
Exactly. It understood normalization degrees, relationships conceptually, and interestingly, it could then extract that proposed normalized data structure into, say, an Excel file using Python code that it generated and showed him,
Yeah.
which suggests potential uses in maybe data prep automation, especially if you're using tools like Fabric Python notebooks where you could potentially run that code.
Interesting angle.
But it highlighted to Injae that for developers overseeing or using AI for modeling, understanding the why behind star schemas, normalization becomes even more crucial than ever.
Because the AI might give you a structure, but you need the knowledge to know if it's the right structure for your specific business needs and reporting requirements.
Exactly that. You need to be the expert validator. He also tested mock-up generation. This was interesting. He used only the data's summary or metadata, not the actual data values. He asked it to design a dashboard for a CEO, telling it to follow good design principles. ChatGPT generated hypothetical KPIs, things like average lead time or customer satisfaction score.
Even if those weren't in the original metadata.
Right. He noted this could be incredibly valuable for brainstorming, especially for developers who are new to a particular industry or business domain. It gives you ideas for relevant metrics.
That's a neat use case. And the visual quality of the mock-ups themselves, I read that changed quickly.
That was one of his key findings, yeah. Over just a few weeks or months using the same prompts, the quality of the actual generated mock-up images improved dramatically.
How so?
Initially, they looked quite poor, messy, overlapping elements, but later iterations, especially when prompted specifically for more white space and better layout, became much more plausible, more like actual dashboards.
The underlying GenAI models are improving that rapidly.
It seems so. It proved to him that these models can generate plausible visual mock-ups just from metadata, which is pretty amazing. Though getting a perfect business-ready design still clearly needs human iteration and very specific prompting.
What about documentation and coding? How did the AI fare there?
For documentation, he tried exporting measure metadata using tools like DAX Studio or Verbal Analyzer, pasted that into ChatGPT, and asked it to generate documentation.
Did it work?
It produced a decent starting point, a table listing the measures, their expressions, format strings, that kind of thing. But it struggled with explaining the purpose or business logic behind the measures. So it creates a baseline, quickly saves typing, but needs human refinement for meaning and context.
Okay, and coding.
He confirmed what others have found. M code and Vega-lite code generation is still quite difficult for current AI models. They're not specifically trained deeply on those languages yet.
But other languages were better.
Python, HTML, SQL, much better results, more reliable. DAX was hit or miss. It often doesn't know the latest functions or nuances. It seemed best suited for simpler, more self-contained coding tasks, like maybe generating the HTML needed for a rounded corner image element in a report.
So complex logic is still tricky.
Very much so. His hope for the future, maybe using multimodal AI that can see images, is that you could eventually show it a picture of a visual and have it generate the code. But we're not there yet.
So Injae's overall conclusion on whether ChatGPT can do his job as a Power BI developer is?
His conclusion, based on these experiments, was that AI can definitely do many individual tasks that a developer currently performs. Things like basic data analysis, helping structure data models, generating starter documentation and mock-ups, writing simple code snippets. But it absolutely requires human oversight, critical validation, and domain expertise, especially to ensure business value, accuracy, and alignment with requirements. It's not replacing the developer role yet.
But it's changing it.
It's definitely changing what the job involves. It shifts the focus.
Which links right back to that idea we discussed earlier, the augmented professional.
Precisely. And it also raised an interesting point in the sources about the growing need for maybe standards or even a code of conduct around AI-assisted development, similar to how traditional engineering fields have standards.
To ensure quality and responsibility.
Exactly. Because even if the AI generates the code or the report, the human developer or analyst is ultimately responsible for ensuring it's correct, reliable, and used ethically. Human oversight and accountability remain paramount.
Okay, so this all sounds incredibly powerful, definitely full of potential, but, it can't be entirely smooth sailing, right? What are the big challenges or hurdles people need to be aware of when they start using this?
You're right, it's not magic. And the absolute biggest, most fundamental challenge, one that comes up again and again in the sources, is data preparation.
Ah, the foundation.
The message is crystal clear, almost a mantra. Data needs to be prepared to work with Copilot. You can't just point it at any old messy model and expect miracles.
What does prepared really mean in this context? Clean data.
Clean data is part of it, yes. But it's more than that. Your data models need to be well-structured, ideally following best practices like star schemas. Why? Because the AI interprets that structure to understand relationships and context.
The structure matters. What else?
And they need to be semantically rich. That means having clear, unambiguous names for tables and columns, and especially adding good descriptions to measures, columns, and tables. This metadata is vital context for the AI.
Because otherwise,
the AI is essentially guessing. If your model is messy, ambiguous, or lacks clear descriptions, the AI is far more likely to produce inaccurate or nonsensical outputs, those infamous AI hallucinations.
and many existing models probably weren't built with this AI interpretability in mind.
Exactly. Many were built purely for reporting speed or specific visuals. There's often a need to revisit and enhance existing models to make them AI ready. It's a shift in how we need to think about designing our data layer.
So it's less just optimizing for human report consumers and more optimizing for both humans and AI interpretation.
That's a great way to put it. Optimizing for AI is becoming a critical factor in data governance and architecture, and Microsoft is providing tools to help with this grounding process.
Like what?
Features within Fabric and Power BI like Define AI Data Schema, which lets you subset your data and tell Copilot which tables and columns are most important or relevant.
Okay, focus its attention.
Right. And create verified answers, where you can pre-curate known good responses or DAX measures for common questions, ensuring accuracy for those specific cases.
Giving it some guardrails.
Exactly. There's also Add AI instructions, where you can provide model-level guidance, maybe explaining complex business logic or specific calculations in natural language for the AI. And, of course, the simple but crucial act of adding clear descriptions to everything: tables, columns, measures.
So these tools essentially help ground the AI, give it better context about your specific data.
Yes, precisely. They help ground the AI in the specific context and business logic of your data model, which significantly reduces the chance of errors or misinterpretations. You can even formally mark a semantic model as prepped for AI in the service once you feel it meets these standards.
That really underscores how central that data foundation is. It's not a side note.
It's absolutely central to making GenAI work effectively and reliably in Power BI.
We touched on prompt engineering earlier as a new skill. Is that mainly a challenge, or is it more about best practices?
It's definitely both, I think. It's a challenge to learn because it's a new way of interacting with the tools, but mastering it becomes a critical best practice. Getting good results consistently requires crafting clear, specific, and well-structured prompts.
Any tips in the sources on how to do that well?
Yeah, some common themes emerged. Be explicit about what you want. Don't assume the AI knows. Use analogies or examples if the concept is complex. Try to avoid ambiguity in your language.
Be direct.
Be direct. Break down complex requests into smaller steps or instructions. And definitely experiment. Try different wording, different levels of detail. See what works best for your specific task and data.
And the community is helping here too?
Hugely. Community efforts like Injae Park sharing his successful prompts for specific tasks are really valuable resources for learning this new skill. It's a collective learning process.
what about the inherent limitations of the AI models themselves, beyond bad data or bad prompts?
Right, there are still limitations. You need to be constantly aware of the potential for those hallucinations where the AI confidently provides incorrect information. Fact-checking is still essential.
Don't trust blindly.
Never trust blindly. AI outputs can also sometimes be non-deterministic, meaning the exact same prompt might give slightly different results on different runs. That can be tricky for tasks needing perfect consistency. There's the obvious dependency on data quality. We hammered home bad data in, bad AI out. Computational costs can be a factor, although Microsoft making Copilot available on those broader Fabric STUs, F2+, is significantly addressing the cost barrier for many.
That was a big move.
It was. And while privacy and security are managed via admin controls within Fabric, like processing data within your geographic region, organizations still need to understand and configure those controls appropriately. And finally, there are current technical limitations, for example. Copilot chat and reports doesn't yet fully respect visual level filters, though the sources suggest that's on the roadmap.
So, still evolving.
Constantly evolving.
It really sounds like the cleaner and better structured your data and model are, and the better you get at asking the right questions, prompt engineering, the more value you're ultimately going to get from these tools.
That's absolutely the key takeaway from all the sources. The success of GenAI and Power BI is intrinsically linked to the quality of your data foundation and your ability to guide the AI effectively. It elevates the importance of data preparation, governance, modeling best practices, and just fundamentally understanding your data.
So, looking ahead then, shifting gears to the future, what's the forecast? What can we expect next for generative AI and Power BI? More of the same or bigger shifts coming?
Well, certainly expect relentless improvement, better AI accuracy, more stability, fewer hallucinations, hopefully, and the continuous introduction of new capabilities. This field is moving incredibly fast.
So the tools will just keep getting smarter and more capable.
That seems to be the trajectory, yes. And expect more seamless interaction. Those Fabric data agents we mentioned, they're likely to become even more central.
Making that natural language querying across all your unified data sources within one lake even more powerful.
Exactly. More seamless, more intuitive. We'll also probably see the further democratization of machine learning capabilities directly within the platform, making predictive modeling more accessible too.
And for the people working with data every day, how do you see their roles changing even further down the line?
The skill set is fundamentally shifting, as we've discussed. There's going to be a growing premium on that prompt engineering skill, absolutely. But just as importantly, on the ability to critically evaluate and validate the AI's output.
Knowing if the answer makes sense.
Precisely. And to do that, you need to understand the underlying theory data modeling principles, ETL concepts, statistical basics, maybe. Because the AI might generate the how very quickly, but you, the human, need to understand the why and, crucially, if it's the correct and appropriate how for your specific business context.
So technical depth and fundamentals remains critical.
Perhaps even more so. And communication skills, too, gathering clear requirements to feed the AI and then explaining the AI's results and limitations to business stakeholders, that becomes more critical.
So it's really less about being the sole executor of every single step in the process.
Yeah.
And maybe more about being the strategist, the architect, the guide, and the ultimate quality control for the AI's work.
That sums it up nicely. AI is augmenting the workforce, enhancing productivity, but not fully replacing the need for human expertise and judgment, at least not yet. It requires a blend of those traditional data skills with these new competencies in interacting with, guiding, and validating AI systems.
Which implies continuous learning is basically mandatory now.
Absolutely non-negotiable for anyone wanting to stay relevant and effective in the data space. The landscape is changing too fast to stand still.
Okay, so to wrap things up then, it's clear that generative AI, really spearheaded by Copilot within the Microsoft ecosystem, is profoundly changing Power BI. It's making it smarter, more proactive, and definitely much more accessible to a wider range of people.
It's genuinely moving us beyond just reporting on what happened in the past, towards actively helping create insights and drive future actions and outcomes. It's a significant shift.
And this whole transformation, it's not happening in a vacuum. It's thanks to that combination of strategic vision and heavy engineering efforts within Microsoft,
Right.
combined with the crucial work of the broader community, folks like Injae Park, organizations like SQLBI, and countless others who are figuring out the practical applications, hitting the roadblocks, and sharing that knowledge back.
Yeah, that collaborative ecosystem is key. And the big takeaways for anyone listening seem to be focus on collaboration, embrace that iterative refinement process when working with the AI.
Don't expect perfection first time.
Exactly. And absolutely prioritize your data preparation. Good, clean, well-structured, well-described data, and learning how to write good prompts, that's the foundation for success with GenAI in Power BI.
Because these tools, powerful as they are, accelerate workflows and democratize access, but they absolutely require that human expertise, that critical validation, and strong data governance as their bedrock.
Couldn't agree more. Which leaves us, I think, with a final thought for you, the listener, to consider as you start exploring or continue using these tools.
Okay, lay it on us.
Given that AI can now increasingly generate initial analysis quite quickly, help structure data models, propose report layouts, even write chunks of code, how does the fundamental role of the data professional really shift? Are we truly moving from being the primary executor of many of those tasks to becoming more the architect, the guide, and the critical validator of the AI's work?
And if so,
And if so, what does that imply for how we should be training and developing the next generation of data experts? What skills become paramount? It's a big question.
it really is a fascinating one. It's a genuinely exciting and maybe slightly daunting, but definitely challenging time in the data world. We really encourage you to dive into these new capabilities yourself, experiment, and see how they start to change the way you work with data. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.